Namaste and good morning. Welcome to the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston and our Sunday service. Om Yo Brahmanam Dadvidadhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedangscha Prahinoti Tasmai Tam Hadevam Atma Buddhi Prakasham Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye. We who seek liberation take refuge in that infinite light which illuminates the hearts of all. That divine being who is the source of the Creator himself and the repository of the infinite knowledge, Veda. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Om peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So this morning, the topic is the dynamics of faith. I think I put in the schedule, what is faith? But on the fly, I changed the title to the dynamics of faith. It doesn't matter the title so much, but it's about faith, what faith is, and how faith works. So, of course, as we know, faith is very important in religion. It's central in religion. And in some religions, it's the be-all and end-all of religion. But even in religions like Buddhism, they don't teach, there is no God. There's not even a self, no God, just a state of enlightenment that one can attain. And that through rational analysis of experience and trying to overcome primordial ignorance. But even in Buddhism, faith is central. And that's why whatever school of Buddhism one might belong to, one says every day, Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami, Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in his teachings, I take refuge in his community. That implies, it doesn't say faith, but it implies faith. And in the actual path of Buddhism, faith is given a very prominent place. And so in yoga also, Yoga Darshana of Patanjali, faith is given an important place, though again, Patanjali presents a scientific, rational analysis of the mind and its powers and how to control the mind and then go beyond the mind, but all in a rational framework. But there also faith is, is important. And in Advaita Vedanta as well, the path of the path of knowledge, the path of philosophy, the path of analysis of experience and trying to discriminate between the real and the unreal. There also faith is very, very important. Now, in some religions, they emphasize that you start with faith, and others, like in yoga and in Advaita Vedanta and Buddhism, you start with thinking and reasoning about things, and you gradually acquire faith. But all of them give an important place to faith. And yet we also know that faith is abused in the name of religion. It's very much abused and has been all through history. Someone or some text demanding faith and then abusing the faith that is solicited from the followers. And so we find that in the Western world, in Western history, there was a long struggle against religious domination, the domination of the Christian church. Now, what I'm saying, I'm not criticizing the Christ or the teachings of Christianity, but the organization, the church organization, and the attempt to control the mind of humanity. In the Western world, there was a long struggle against that. And so you find in India, because there was not that same struggle. In India, manana, thinking about things, reasoning about things, the pursuit of logic, the pursuit of science, even old traditional sciences of India. Reason was not decried. Faith was there, but reason also was important. So you don't have the same struggle in India as you see in the West. But because of that struggle in the West, you find that the tradition is, or not, well, the history is one of the struggle for reason to rise above the demands of faith. If faith says that the earth is the center of the universe, and science finds that the earth is not the center of the universe, if faith says that the sun revolves around the earth and all of the heavens revolve around the earth because this is the center of God's activity, and science finds that that's not true, then you have a struggle because religion thinks it is, that is institutional religion, thinks that it is dependent upon truths like that for its very existence. If science can move the earth out of the center of the universe, then maybe it can move God out of the universe altogether. And so you set up a tension where religion and science are fighting with each other. There's the possibility of that in India, but you don't find it so much because there were great thinkers like Shankaracharya who said that the purpose of the Veda is not to teach about this universe. That you can get through the senses. You don't need the Vedas to tell you what the universe is. That you learn through the senses and rational analysis. Science, which is science. Sense knowledge with rational analysis. That's what science is. So Shankaracharya said that you can get that in those means. You don't need the Veda to tell you what things are made out of, etc. What the Veda exists to do is to tell that which is atindriya, that which is beyond the senses, beyond the power of the intellect, the transcendent reality, because that the mind and intellect can't figure out for themselves, because it's beyond the mind, beyond the power of the mind to conceive of. And so that's what, so Shankaracharya says that if the scriptures say something about the nature of the universe, which is found to be in conflict with direct experience, then forget about what the scripture says. That's not the purpose of the scriptures. He says, when the scriptures speak about the world, the universe, the jagat, samsara, it's with the intention of pointing to that which is beyond this universe. It's not to actually explain what how the universe is made. And so that was a great service provided by thinkers like Shankaracharya. Still, you find that those, of course, there are many sects in India that don't accept Shankaracharya and his ideas. There are those proponents of modern Hinduism who have said that actually the sun is closer to the earth than the moon, because it said so somewhere in the scriptures, that the realm of the sun, Surya Loka, is closer than Chandra Loka. And so God has deluded the scientists with his Maya to make them think that the moon is closer than the sun. Well, that's ridiculous. We don't need to believe such things which are directly and obviously contradicted by experience. So, coming back to the conflict in the West, that was not the case in the West, where science and religion were at loggerheads, because in the West there was not, in fact, in most of the world, except for the Advaita Vedanta philosophy, most of the world, religion has not separated the principles from the stories and the mythology and so forth. In Vedanta, through the Upanishads, the principles were exposed. So the mythology is just there to express the principles. The mythology is not there to tell external history. But in other religions, the mythology is confused with history and confused with the principles. And without the ability to extract them, then again, if science says that the earth is not the center of the universe, then, my God, religion is falling apart. If science says that the world was not created in 6 days by God, 6 solar days as we know them by God, then religion is falling apart. If science says that evolution, through evolution, that humanity has arisen from the most primitive life up through various life forms until you get to humanity, and God was not the special creation of, man was not the special creation of God, then all religion falls apart. And so in the West, we find that there's this struggle between faith and science. But there doesn't need to be that struggle. So we have blind faith. That is, blind faith is when somebody tells me something, or the tradition tells me something, or the scripture tells me something, and I believe it without even thinking about it. Well, the scripture has said it, I believe it. There's an old bumper sticker I saw many years ago here in Texas. In fact, it was in Austin back in the early 1980s when bumper stickers were still very popular. It said, Bible, dash, God said it, I believe it, that settles it. So the Bible is the Word of God. God said it, I believe it, that settles it. So don't bother me with science, don't bother me with anything else. Evolution is nonsense because it's not in the Bible, and so forth. A blind faith is not the faith that we're speaking about today. But again, faith has been abused. It's led to superstition, and that all over the world. Superstition is a human problem. It's not a religious problem. It's a human problem. And there is many superstitions in modern science as there is in religion. And then, of course, religious teachers have, through history and very visibly in modern times because of modern media and modern reporting, have abused the faith of their followers. And so faith is central to religion, and yet faith is easily abused. And then because through the spread of Western culture around the world, which included, among other things, it included the spread of the modern scientific attitude. Now we find that all over the world with scientific education, we are taught to question and we are taught to doubt. And that's a good thing. And again, that because of the struggle in the West between religion and religious authority, that doubting and that questioning became more aggressive. So I don't mean that they need to be as aggressive as many people in the West are with their questioning and doubting, where you prove it to me. I won't believe anything you say until you prove it to me. That's an exaggerated form of doubting and skepticism. But the basic tendency is good, to question, and that is the significance of the teaching in the Upanishads and throughout the Vedanta tradition of Shravana, Manana, Nidhyasana. First, you have to hear the truth, but then you have to think about it, reason about it, figure it out, see if it's true. The Buddha said, don't accept something because your forefathers have told you. Don't accept something because some ancient book has said so. Don't accept something because society around you has told you. Question for yourself, see what is true, and then follow it. And Swami Vivekananda said the same in the modern world, that first question. He said, let no one feel bad that they are hard to convince. I questioned my master at every step of the way, and hence I know every step of the path. And so again, that affirmation of the need for questioning, the need for thinking about things, the need for coming to a conviction of truth. Because if we don't do that, then first of all, if we just believe it just because somebody told us, well, anybody can tell us anything, and we'll believe it. And secondly, even if what the person or the tradition or the text teaches us is true, we haven't really understood it. We've just said, well, it said it, so I believe it, so that's the end of it. I don't need to think about it anymore. No, we have to question the truth, but with a desire for learning the truth. That's part of the problem that has come with modern education, where we're taught to question, analyze, doubt, etc., is that becomes a habit of mind where we're not even looking for truth anymore. We're just trying to tear everything down, to question everything, doubt everything, with the intention of tearing everything down. But no, if we have to have the desire for truth. So there are some people who, in the modern age, with a scientific education, are religious because they recognize that there is something in religion which science doesn't give. Their values, there's meaning, there's purpose to life, which science can't reveal. Again, science deals with all of this that we perceive through the senses. But religion gives us something which is higher, connects us to something which we can't see with the senses. And so some try to accommodate the apparent conflict between science and religion by being scientific when they're at work, if their work is in a scientifically related field, and then religious when they're in the church. But we can't lead a divided life. The mind has to be whole. The mind that we take into church or temple, that's the same mind that we have to take into the workplace and into the field of scientific inquiry. The mind is the same, and so the mind should be able to follow the same principles in both. So how to be true to a scientific outlook and yet be religious, yet be spiritual. And it is possible. It is possible. So let me change course for a little bit. This introduction that I've given, that'll be sort of woven in as background to what I'm going to say, and I'll come back to it from time to time. But let me change course and say that faith, it's important to understand that faith is universal. Everyone has faith. Everywhere. I don't mean faith in God, because obviously everyone doesn't. But everyone has and uses faith every day and every moment of their lives. Children, when they are born into the world, they are full of uncontradicted faith. The child, the child comes into the world full of faith. Their mother and their father are like gods to them. In fact, the Taittiriya Upanishad, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, a teacher, a guru in an ashram, in a gurukul, he gives the valedictory address to his students as they are finishing their 12 years of instruction under him. And so he tells them, Matri Devo Bhava, Pitri Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava. Let your mother be as a deity to you. Let your father be as a god to you. Let your teacher be as a deity to you. And that for a child is natural. I remember, and I'm sure everyone can remember such incidents in my childhood when with friends we'd get into heated arguments because I would say, my father said such and such, and they said, no, my father said this other thing. And so something that was not important at all, just a matter of opinion, whether pancakes are good or pancakes are not good, something stupid like that. But no, my father said it, it must be true. Or no, my father said it's not like that, it can't be true. No, my father said it. So that is a natural to the attitude of a child. The child is full of faith. But gradually the child learns that they can't believe everything. There's a story which I was read in a book of fairy tales my mother used to read to me when she was putting me to sleep. It is a story I've told here before. Some of you have heard me tell it. About a princess who believed everything that anyone told her. And her father, the king, was terrified because he saw his daughter growing up, coming into her teen years, and yet believing anything that anyone told her. And he knew that people would abuse that tendency of hers to believe. And so he wanted to convince her that, no, you can't believe everything everyone tells you. And so the father tried to convince her, and she didn't understand why. She just still believed everything. He asked his ministers, they couldn't reason with the girl. She just couldn't get the idea. And so then he posted a notice around the kingdom saying that anyone who can convince my daughter not to believe anything and everything that someone says will get such and such a reward. And so people came forward and they tried and they all failed. She still couldn't understand why I can't believe anyone. And finally, a wise man was passing through this kingdom, and he saw the notice, and he thought, let me try. So he goes to the king and says that I can do this. And the king says, so many people have tried, it's no use. No one has been able to do anything. So it will give me 2 days to try. And so the king said, okay. So the wise man sat with the princess for 2 days and tried everything he could to reason with her, to explain to her why you can't believe everything. and nothing worked. So finally, he got so frustrated. He said, "You are a fool, and your father is a bigger fool for trying to do anything with you." And the daughter said, "No, my father's not a fool. He's a good man." And so suddenly she had rejected something that someone had told her. And so the wise man, of course, won the award. So my mother, when we would come to that, she'd read through the storybook several times. And whenever we would come to that story, I couldn't understand it for the life of me. I thought, she's such a good princess. What's wrong with believing everybody? It was completely beyond my understanding. So I was in the same situation as the princess. But as we grow up, we learn that we can't believe everything. We have to discriminate. We have to know what is the purpose of the person in saying this. What are they trying to manipulate me? Do they have good intentions? Do they have bad intentions? Is what they're saying true, or is it false on objective terms? So all of these things come into play. So as we grow up, we begin to lose the power of spontaneous faith, that faith with which the child has, where everybody is a good person. Children have to be told that no, you can't, anyone who comes along, you can't follow along with them. You can't talk to everybody. You have to be careful with strangers and things like that. That's completely foreign into the child's mind. So for their own protection, they have to be trained to be careful. So gradually we lose the power of faith. And then in school, we're taught to question everything, to doubt, in modern education, certainly. And so by the time we come to adulthood, we find it hard to believe in things. But again, the capacity for faith and the acting on the basis of faith works within everyone even now, even the most skeptical person. We all believe that the sun is going to rise. We all believe that the earth is going to be stable. We all believe that the seasons are going to follow one after another. We find in time that even those things are not completely dependable. Sometimes rains don't fall when they should, according to normal seasonal rainfall. Sometimes there are droughts, sometimes there are earthquakes. But in general, we have faith that the world is going to keep working. We have faith that our bodies are going to keep working. And of course, sometimes that's belied. We suddenly find that the body won't do something we want it to do. But in general, we have faith that the body is going to work. And even when some part of the body stops working correctly, we learn to adjust. And we think then that the adjustments I'm making, those will continue to work. We breathe without thinking, my God, is there going to be air for the next breath? No, I have faith that air is going to be there. I can continue breathing. And I have faith that the car is going to take me where I want to go. Sometimes it breaks down, but then I learn to fix it. And so we operate on the basis of faith every moment. And so we have to first learn to see that faith is a natural part of life, that everyone has faith and everyone acts on faith. But what we have to do as adults is learn what to have faith in and what not to have faith in. Again, when I was a kid, I would see my grandfather getting so upset with advertisements on the television, and I couldn't understand why he was getting upset. He was upset with the advertisements on television because they exaggerate everything, and many of the things, especially back in the 50s, you could get away with telling all sorts of ridiculous things. I remember there was from my small childhood, there was a company that made space heaters, oil-powered space heaters, not the type that you carry around and plug in, but a big permanent piece of furniture you put in the room with a stack for the smoke and everything. And it said that through new technology, our heater sends out heat which stays at floor level, and it warms up the whole floor, and the heat stays on the floor. Well, of course, that's ridiculous. They haven't. That's contrary to scientific principle. Heat rises, and cold air goes to the bottom. But they would show in the advertisement how they would put smoke into the system, so it'd blow out smoke, and the whole floor would be covered with smoke in the advertisement to prove their point that ours keeps the floor warm. So my grandfather would get irate at the lying and advertising. And again, as a kid, I couldn't understand it. Why he didn't just believe what they were saying, what the purpose of disbelieving was. But no, as we grow up, we have to learn what we should have faith in and what we should not have faith in. And that's one of the central tenets in spirituality also, what to believe in and what not to believe in. You find in all traditions, spiritual teachers, they don't put it in those terms, because traditionally there was not, in the West or in the East, there was not this conflict between reason and religion that started in the West with the late Renaissance, and then with colonialism it spread around the world. But in religion, that has always been seen as necessary, what you should believe in and what you shouldn't. So again, faith is universal. And there's even faith in science. If you go into the laboratory, you have faith in the method. You have faith in the instruments that you use. You have faith in the scientists that have gone before you who questioned and came to conclusions. So you can't repeat all of the scientific experiments that have ever taken place. So you look at the body of scientific work which has gone before you, and you have faith in that which has gone before you. So again, faith exists everywhere. Everyone uses faith all of the time. But in religion, it takes a special form and has a special importance. It's central in religion. So again, because religion deals with that which we can't see. Now, not all religions do. Many religions are very physical, God is very much a God of this world who acts like us and thinks like us and so forth, only thinks much better than we do, but thinks like us. And wiser than we, but still wise in terms that we can understand. So for many people, religion is very much social and this worldly. But spiritual religion deals with that which is atindriya, that which is beyond the senses. And so faith becomes important because we're aiming towards that which we haven't realized, that which we haven't seen. And yet we're told not to be blind in our faith, to question, to think about things until we become convinced. So religion is not hocus pocus. It's not just believing in anything that anyone tells us. It's believing in that which has been examined and determined to be true. So religion, though it deals with that which is beyond the senses, the effects of religion we can see here. We can see the effects on a person's life. And if we've had the blessing of knowing a number of highly spiritual people, that's a rare blessing. But if we have that blessing of having lived among some highly spiritual people, we begin to get a sense of what spirituality means because we see it manifested in their character. With one person, that's not enough because there we can't determine what is that person's peculiarity and what is the quality which comes from their spirituality. But if we've had the opportunity to live among several spiritual people, we begin to see the qualities which are common, those which are not individual peculiarities. Some person may just naturally be very calm, but you find people here who are naturally very calm and they're not spiritual at all. Some people may be very kind and loving, but not because they're spiritual, but it's because of their nature. But if we live among spiritual people, we begin to see that there are qualities which are common. There's a feeling that you get around such people that you don't get around others. So we begin to get a sense of what religion is. So again, I mentioned that religious teachers have, and we see it in the news all the time, religious teachers have abused the faith of their followers as well in all religions. And that's why Sri Ramakrishna said that faith is very difficult to acquire. Those who have faith, genuine faith, it's the result of many lifetimes of virtuous living. And so he said that someone who teaches, who destroys other people's faith, acquires very, very bad karma because they're destroying that which has taken lifetimes to acquire. I've known people who were cheated by a spiritual teacher in a bad way, and after that they found it impossible to believe in anyone, to follow any spiritual teacher. So Sri Ramakrishna used to say that there's a special responsibility on spiritual teachers, because if they cheat their followers, then it destroys something which people have acquired over lifetimes. So now let me come to the question of what is faith. Rabindranath Tagore, I often quote this saying of his. He said that faith is the early morning bird who begins to sing before the rising of the sun. That is, the bird who knows that the sun is going to rise, but it hasn't seen any light in the sky. It hasn't seen any indication that the sun is going to rise, and yet it knows without any question. And so it begins to sing because it knows that the sunrise is nigh, the sunrise is coming. And so he said that faith is the early morning bird that sings before the sun has risen. And so faith is that which, as Swami Vivekananda put the same idea in rational terms, or there are more philosophical terms. He said, faith is an intuitive grasp on the ultimate. An intuitive grasp on the ultimate. So it means that faith is, I've understood by thinking, by meditating, by inquiring, I've understood that yes, there must be a divine reality. I know that. I haven't yet realized God, I haven't seen God, but now I don't have any doubt. My heart has grasped the point that there is a God. I don't have doubt in that. And so he said it's an intuitive meaning. It's not because you've seen a vision or not because you've heard divine sounds or something like that. It's an intuitive meaning. The higher mind has grasped the point. An intuitive grasp on the ultimate. Grasp because you actually now are convinced that, yes, this is true. I don't have to question this anymore because I know that it's true. I feel the truth of it. So Sri Ramakrishna used to speak about faith often. You'll find in the Kotamrita that he speaks a lot about faith. And so in one place he says something which is very enigmatic. He says that Arjuna's faith in Krishna was such, that when Krishna, and I forget the exact birds he used, they were birds of India, so I'll use an American equivalent or American equivalence. He said, Sri Krishna saw a bird and said, oh, look, Arjuna, there's a black crow. And Arjuna looked and said, oh, yes, a black crow. And then a moment later, Krishna said, oh, no, it's a white crane. And Arjuna said, oh, yes, it's a white crane. And so Sri Ramakrishna praised that as the perfect faith of Arjuna. Now that sounds like Arjuna doesn't have any common sense. Because Sri Krishna says he sees it's a black crow, and suddenly you say, oh yes, it's a black crow, and then he sees it's a white crane. Oh yes, it's a white crane. He's either a yes man or he sounds like he's stupid. But no, the point of that illustration is that there are levels of faith, and Arjuna was at the highest level, where he was so identified with Sri Krishna that he saw what Sri Krishna saw. So it's not that he was a yes man, and it's certainly not that we should go around whatever anybody tells us, even if it's stupid, we say, well, yes, whatever you say is true. Or even if our spiritual teacher tells us something that we don't see that way, that we have to just keep quiet and say, oh, yes, so what you say is right. No, we can question and we can say, no, I don't understand that. It doesn't look that way to me. That is all good and necessary. We should do that. We shouldn't just believe because somebody says something. But there's a much higher level of faith where one, with a Sri Krishna, with a Sri Ramakrishna, not with a human guru, no matter how good the human guru is, but one who is with one of the level of a Sri Krishna or a Buddha, a Jesus, a Ramakrishna, a Vivekananda. One becomes so identified with them that one sees through their eyes. One sees as they see. And so that's the intent of the story. And so one of the things we find from that story is that there are levels of faith. And so that level illustrated in the story of Krishna and Arjuna, that comes of itself at the heights of development. That's not something for us to practice. So when reading scriptures, when reading teachings of someone like Sri Ramakrishna, the Holy Mother, we should always try to figure out who are they speaking to, at what level are they speaking, and why are they saying this? Not just to take it at face value, but to understand whether there is a level of understanding involved here. Of course, there are many things we don't have to do that with, which the meaning is clear to us. But I mean, when there's something like this, the story of Krishna and Arjuna with the birds, where it seems really strange and confusing, there we have to consider, well, there must be something more to this than is seeming to the eye. M. Mahendranath Gupta, the recorder of the gospel, he was asked, what was the most important thing he got from Sri Ramakrishna? What is that, the single most important thing that you received from Sri Ramakrishna? And M said, faith. Now that's a strange statement, to say that faith is that the most important thing I received. Why didn't he say devotion? Why didn't he say spiritual experience? Why didn't he say samadhi, ecstasy, or the realization of God? All of these things that he could have said that he got from Sri Ramakrishna, but he said the most important thing he got was faith. Because if we understand what faith is, then we understand the profound nature of faith. We understand that faith eventually becomes a complete orientation towards reality, towards spiritual reality, the complete and unwavering orientation towards that. That's not what we start with. That's not what we think of as faith active in our lives right now, but eventually that's where faith takes us. And so faith was that which completely transformed M's life. It was that which was the foundation of his devotion. And so he said faith rather than devotion, because faith was the foundation of his devotion. Faith was that which made spiritual awakening possible. Faith was that which made his spiritual life possible. So it was faith which was behind everything. Swami Brahmananda, a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, when he was on his deathbed, he was in ecstasy, and among the many beautiful things he said, it's a beautiful meditation to read about the end of Swami Brahmananda's life, where he was in a state of high ecstasy. So at one point he says, I'm floating on the leaf of faith in the ocean of Brahman. I'm floating on the leaf of faith in the ocean of Brahman. There, faith doesn't mean I know that God exists, but I don't see God. No, there faith meant certainty. Talking about things as just a tangent, say things happening that you're not expecting. I just saw a tree fall down. So the world sometimes doesn't behave as you expect it to. Faith is belied, right out there. But again, you won't see it now. It's already down. It's on the other side of the fence. Faith, I'm floating on the leaf of faith in the ocean of Brahman. That was the faith which culminates in experience. That was certainty. So faith as a belief, that's at one level, but that faith matures into the faith of direct experience. And so that's what Swami Brahmananda was speaking of. He was floating on the leaf of faith. The leaf of certainty in the ocean of Brahman. He saw the ocean of Brahman and saw his individualized consciousness floating on the leaf of faith on the ocean of Brahman. And so, again, there are levels of faith. So at the beginning, faith can be an intriguing possibility. We read about or hear about spirituality, and we think that that sounds possible. And my life doesn't seem to have much meaning. I want my life to have meaning, and that seems to offer meaning. And so we begin to develop a little faith where we feel that, no, this is an intriguing possibility, a realm of possibility. I want to look into it deeper. I want to find out if this is true. And for some other people, even that is not necessary, because some people, and I've known many people like this, who from childhood, they never had any doubt about the existence of God. Not because of spiritual experience, but just because it was just a part of their mental universe. They couldn't imagine there not being a God. And so God was just a natural part of their thinking. And that's good. Again, as Sri Ramakrishna said, that comes as a result of lifetimes of effort. And so if you have that, then good. But that's not enough. That's just the beginning. And so many people just sort of float along throughout their lives from beginning to end just with that. Just with the idea of God being part of their mental universe, but not going any deeper into it. So that's just the beginning of faith. So either it begins with, we didn't have faith in God, but we hear about spirituality and it's an intriguing possibility and we want to find out more. We want to see if there's something to go towards in that direction. Or it is a part of our natural mental universe, and we want to go forward with it. So that's the beginning of faith. And then we find that at a higher level, as we begin to practice spiritual practice, as we begin to learn about spirituality, we begin to think about the possibility of spiritual experience and what everything means, how the ideas fit together, the possibility of all of this. Then a time comes eventually where there's the absence of doubt, where we begin to get a conviction, a vishwasa, shraddha, like Nachiketa in the Katha Upanishad. We get a fixed belief, not a fixed belief in the bad sense that people have psychological problems because they have a fixed idea. But no, the idea becomes fixed in our minds because we're deeply convinced of the truth of it. We've considered it, we've thought about it, and then we haven't yet had spiritual experience, but there's no longer any doubt. And so that's a good stage. That's still an early stage, but it's a very good stage when we come to that. When we've come to the point where we've questioned, we're not trying to avoid questions, we're not avoiding doubt or anything, but we have questioned, we have doubted, and we come to the certainty that yes, there must be something there. We may still have doubts about details, but not about the reality of God. And so then we can move forward. How do we go from an initial the sense of an intriguing possibility to the point where we no longer have doubt and are ready to move forward? We get there by thinking about spiritual things. Whatever we think about, whatever we think deeply about, whatever we think a lot about, that begins to color all of our thinking. That begins to become a part of us. It becomes part of our mental universe, just an accepted part of our mental universe. It's the same thing that if you want to study an art or music, if you go into the arts, so you study it, you look at a lot of examples of art, you begin to get a sense of things. You begin to get a sense of how that particular art works, whether it's painting or sculpting or acting or music, whatever it is. By immersing your mind in anything, you find that the secrets of that thing begin to reveal themselves. And so if you expose yourself to religious ideas, spiritual ideas, not just to superficial religious ideas, not conventional temple going, there's nothing wrong with that, but just conventional temple going and offering a coconut and saying a routine prayer and paying the priest and things, that's not enough. But if you go deeper into spiritual religion, into spiritual ideas, you find that the ideas begin to come together and you begin to see the sense of things. Again, there's doubts about the details, but not about the reality of the substance. And so then we go from that to what, again, Swami Vivekananda said was a deeper intuitive grasp on the ultimate. We begin to feel that, yes, you do exist. And let me speak in devotional terms, but this is because that's easier when speaking about faith. But the same is true if one is following the path of knowledge and seeking for self knowledge. Who am I? We forget about God and just want to know what is the reality of my being? What is my deepest reality? It's the same thing, but I'll speak in devotional terms, but those can easily be translated into terms of the path of knowledge as well. So, in the path of devotion, you begin to feel that, yes, when you're thinking about God, when you're praying to God, you feel that God is actually there. I don't see you, I don't hear you, and yet I have that sense that you are there. I'm actually speaking to you, as if I'm speaking to somebody in the dark. I don't see you, but I know that you're there, and I'm speaking to you. I don't close my eyes and then wonder, is anybody still here? I know you're still there. And so when speaking to God, when praying to God, when reciting the mantra, I know that you are there. I have that sense. And so that's a deeper level of faith. And then we begin to understand more deeply an intuitive grasp on the ultimate, that which Swami Vivekananda said. Intuitive because you don't yet experience God directly, and yet you do have a sort of experience. It's an intuitive experience. I know that you are there. I feel it. Now something has sort of opened up in my mind. Something has opened up in my understanding. And now when I'm praying, it's not, I think that I'm praying to God, that God is somewhere, and I'm praying and I'm hoping that wherever God is, that he or she is hearing me and listening to me. No, then you feel that, no, I'm speaking to you. And I know that you're listening to me, just as if you're with somebody in the dark and you know that they're there. You speak to them and know that they understand. So again, it's the intuitive grasp on the ultimate, which is the same idea as the early morning bird, which sings before the rising of the sun. You know that I haven't seen you yet, and yet you're here with me. I'm speaking to you. I can't yet hear you speaking to me, but I know that you are there and you're listening to me, that you hear me. And that's enough for now. And so then the deeper still is when we begin to have initial experiences. And then we know we've had the glimpses of the truth, not the full blaze of illumination, but glimpses of the truth. Then the faith goes even deeper. Then it becomes unshakable. Then we begin to feel day and night that we are oriented towards God. And the deepest, of course, is what M was speaking about when what the main thing I got from Sri Ramakrishna was faith. What Swami Brahmananda was saying that faith, I'm floating on the leaf of faith in the ocean of Brahman. It was a direct experience. So faith was no longer an intuitive grasp on the ultimate. It was immersion in the ultimate. It was direct experience of the ultimate. So all of this is to say that faith is a continuum that we see from our initial interest in spirituality, where we don't really have a very firm faith, but we have a belief that this is an intriguing possibility. I want to pursue it. Let me pursue it. That itself is good. If we have that, then we're on the path. If we have that, then our feet are on the path. All we need to do is to pursue that. And then again, that develops into a faith where now it's become a part of my mental universe, but not in a passive way, but in an active way. Now I think in those terms. I think in terms of God. I think in terms of my relationship to God. Not in the not in the beginning years, many years of spiritual life, not all of the time, but as much as possible, or whenever the mind reverts to religious thought, then that's a part of my thinking. And then that goes deeper when we begin to feel something opens up to us, and we begin to feel that, yes, you are there. Now I no longer feel that I'm praying and God is somewhere hopefully listening, but God, who knows how that works. No, you feel that when I'm praying, I'm talking to you, and you are here, and you're hearing what I'm saying, and that sense of intimacy comes. And then faith begins to become more active in our life. And then again, after time, if we get some initial experiences, intimations of God's presence that are experiential, then we find that they begin to transform our whole character. And finally, of course, it's realized in the full blaze of illumination. But that's one continuous process. So let me say a few words about images of faith, because images are very helpful to us. Metaphors or images of faith are very helpful to us in understanding things, in understanding things in general. That's why spiritual teachers speak in parables, they speak in metaphors. That's why even scientists think and speak oftentimes in metaphors. Why Einstein used to do thought experiments to try to understand the nature of space and time, with a train traveling at near the speed of light and so forth. He would use images like that in order to try to get a sense of how things were. So just take three related and very simple images, that the two of which I've already used. Actually, all three of them in different ways. One, again, is the intuitive grasp. That is, faith is a grasp. It's grasping the reality of God. And so if we think of that, if we think of it as a grasping on to the reality of God, that, of course, depends on coming to the conviction that God exists or the self exists. The belief in the self is easier than belief in God because I know that I exist. But either one, if we start with the path of self-knowledge or we start on the path of devotion towards God, they eventually end in the same place. And so faith in the existence of God, grasping an intuitive grasp on that. And then we can understand the dynamics of faith, the levels of faith, when we understand that our grasp has gone deeper. A grasp on the ultimate has gone deeper. And so also faith is like a compass. It's that which turns our life towards the divine. It's faith is that which allows the compass of our heart to work. A compass works because of the magnetic field. And so the compass is sensitive to the magnetic field, and so it aligns itself with the magnetic field, and so it points towards the north, and it aligns itself north and south. And so faith is that which begins to allow the compass, the natural compass of our minds, to align itself with the field of God's presence, with the align ourselves towards the reality of God. And so faith, in that sense, again, is a compass. It gives us direction, it gives us meaning, it gives us purpose, and it brings unity to the mind, because it, again, it has become a reality. In the beginning, faith, when it's initial, when it's weak, then it's not very active. But as faith becomes stronger, then again, it begins to bring unity to the mind, unity and direction. So the intuitive grasp, it's a compass, and then it's seeing in darkness, like the early morning bird, singing for the not yet risen sun. And so faith is like seeing in darkness. I don't yet see God, and yet I feel your presence. So it's not, when we're thinking internally, it's no longer, and not explaining it to someone else, it's no longer, okay, let me see if I can feel God. Let me try to see if there's anything that I can sense or anything like that. No, I feel your presence, and I know I'm speaking to you. I don't see you, but I'm speaking to you. Let me pour out my heart to you. So seeing in darkness. Let me end by saying that there are spheres of faith that we want to develop. First is, as Swami Vivekananda said, first we need faith in ourselves. Faith in ourselves. And that for many people is very hard. For some people it's easy, for other people it's hard. Many people are full of self-doubt and self-recrimination and so forth. But we need to have faith in ourselves. As Swamiji said, Buddha was a man, Buddha realized God. I too am a man, I too can realize God. And so to have faith in our inner capacity. To realize God, we don't need to be intellectually smart. We can be, but we don't need to be. Simple people can also realize God. So God dwells within the hearts of all and is just waiting for us to turn our attention towards Him, towards her. And so that faith that I can do it if I try. I can do it if I try. So having faith in my own ability. If I don't have self-faith, that's why Swami Vivekananda put it first, because if I don't have self-faith, then I don't have faith in anything that I do. And I don't even have faith in my power to pray. I don't have faith in my power to practice spiritual discipline. I don't have faith in my power to be a good person, etc. So we have to have faith in ourselves. So cultivate faith in oneself. We have to have faith in the path, the spiritual path. Whatever path we've chosen, we have to develop faith that, yes, these are methods which have worked for many, many people. They'll work for me too, because they're based on the nature of the human mind and spirit. And so if I follow them, it will help me too. So let me have faith in myself, in my own ability to follow the path. Let me have faith in the path itself. Because without that, why should I do anything? Why should I do japa if I have no faith in the power of the mantra? I may not have much faith in the power of the mantra. That's okay, because faith is something which grows. But I have to have some faith that this is worthwhile. Then I can do it. If I don't have faith in the path, I won't do anything. Then I have to have faith in God, of course. Faith in God. And that, again, you can interpret God as God, the beloved on the path of devotion, or the divine self, the Brahman, the supreme reality which I am one with. It doesn't matter which way you think of it, internally, externally, devotionally, or knowledge-based, that doesn't matter. But faith in the ultimate reality. That comes with time. But if we start with the minimum working hypothesis of the scientist, that is, it's an intriguing possibility. This looks like it's possible. There are people who seem to have gotten great benefit from it. Let me try it also. That's enough. That's the beginning of faith, is the minimum working hypothesis. This seems to have worked for others. It seems intriguing. The possibilities, if it's true, the possibilities look tremendous. So I want to follow that. So that is the beginning of faith in God, all the way up to the direct experience of God. So faith in God, faith in self, faith in the path that I'm following. And finally, we have to have faith in the universe itself. So what does that mean, faith in the universe? All of us have some faith in the universe, but it's quite provisional for most of us. In fact, for all of us, unless we have begun to become spiritual. Faith in the universe means faith that the universe is not out to get me. Faith that the universe is not against me. Faith that the universe will provide that which I need when I need it. It may not provide what I want when I want it, but it will provide what I need when I need it. The things that I ultimately need, the universe brings to me. And so let me give up that obsession with worrying over what I'm going to get and what I'm going to have. Let me develop the faith that the universe will bring to me what I need, that the universe will cooperate with me as I follow the path. Yes, bad things may happen that I don't want to happen. I may have an accident. I may get hurt. I may get sick. That's part of life. Those things happen along the path of life. But even those things, we can begin to see that, no, those things happened for a reason also. There was something that needed to be worked out through that experience. So let me accept the experiences, good and bad, that come to me, accept them, good and bad, and work my way through them. Let me understand that the universe is providing me with the experiences that I need because of my past karma and because of the grace of God. The grace of God doesn't always come easily. Sometimes it comes through difficulty. But the things that are coming to me, including the difficulties, those are coming because there's something necessary that I have to work out, some karmic burden that needs to be released through the working out of this. But the world is not against me, the world is supporting me. So that's a wonderful thing when we begin to have that faith, that it's not me against the world, but me in cooperation with the world. That the world is the world that each one of us sees, because each one of us sees a different world. That's obvious when you get to know people. You see that everybody sees things very differently. The world that I see, the world that I experience, is the world that I need. And so the world is providing me with the situations that I need. So if we develop faith in God, well, let me start again with faith in self. Faith in self, faith in God, faith in the path to God, and faith in the universe. Then we find that all of those are really part of one faith. Eventually, we find that faith in God, or faith in the ultimate reality, the divine self or God, is the comprehensive faith. If we have that faith deeply enough, then faith in the universe comes, because we see that all is happening through some divine activity that's beyond our understanding, and yet we begin to see it. In some mysterious way, things are working together for our advancement. So I'll end with that. Let me give announcements, and then if there are any questions, I'll take them. No questions? Okay. So, the announcements are, on Tuesday we will continue our study of the Katha Upanishad at 7:30 in the evening, live streamed. On Thursday we'll continue our study of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, live streamed at 11 o'clock in the morning. And I don't remember what I'm speaking on next week, but there will be a lecture next week at 11 o'clock. So, do any of you present here have any questions? Yes, Subbarao, and then Subhadeep. Yes, Subbarao. Between trust and faith, yes. Well, of course, like words, they can be defined differently, so that we can define them as the same thing. Then, but by making a distinction, the distinction I understand, and you can correct me if I understand it wrong, is that trust means trusting in trust means trusting more in people, or well, let me ask you, what do you mean? How do you understand the difference between trust, the words trust and faith? Ah, yes, okay. Okay, yes. That's what I thought, and that's what I was going to start to answer, and then I thought, well, let me make sure that that's what he means by distinguishing the two. So trust, what is the difference between trust and faith? Where trust is more trust towards people, trust who not to trust, and faith faith in God, faith in the scriptures, faith in great souls, etc. Is faith. And so yes, faith. Faith in God, eventually we find that God is the one reality that never fails us, the one that can be trusted 100% without any qualification. And if we're fortunate enough to find a great spiritual teacher, then we can have trust in the spiritual teacher also. Though there, the faith in the spiritual teacher means faith in the spiritual teacher teaching about spiritual things. It doesn't mean that the spiritual teacher may know the laws of physics and the details of biology and things like that. And so if they speak about such things, then we, of course, have to trust our own instinct whether they know what they're talking about or not. But when they speak about spiritual things, if it's a great teacher, then we develop deep faith in their words because of our experience. But that's something that's developed over time. But faith in God, that we can have without any qualification. And trust in people, That comes when we see that they are honest, that their motivation is good. And so, even with a spiritual teacher, Swami Vivekananda said that we should develop faith in a spiritual teacher based on trust, built on observation. That if the spiritual teacher knows the essence of the scriptures, they don't have to be scholars, they don't have to have texts memorized, but they should know the intention and the essence of the scriptures. Their own life should be good and highly moral, without moral failings. They're truthful, etc. And they should have the interest of the students at heart. They shouldn't be using the students for their own purposes. I want to be a big teacher, so I want collect a lot of disciples, so I'm a big teacher. No, that shouldn't be the motivation. The motivation of a true teacher is the welfare, spiritual welfare of the disciple. So if the teacher manifests all of these three qualities, then we can trust them. And so trusting of ordinary people, that's something that's developed. That's why the princess had to learn that she couldn't trust everybody. She couldn't, because people try to manipulate us. And so trust is based on observation and experience. I find that this person is honest. They've never cheated me. I would trust anything I have with them. This person is well motivated. They're not selfish, etc. They're not trying to manipulate me. So that's based on observation. Yes. Oh, no, I'm sorry. So I'll come to you next. But I had already recognized Shubhadeep's. Huh?
A very, very important question for you. Yeah.
Okay. But yes.
So it seems like questions play a critical role in developing the faith. And the three spheres of faith that you talked about, the first one you really said. But some questions it kind of create like one of the lower gunas holding you back. So how to overcome that kind of question that it hinders to self-belief or
Okay, so you're speaking specifically of belief in the self. How do we overcome, like, when we have the lower gunas active within us, things that are holding us back, including the problems we see with ourselves. When we look objectively at ourselves, we see that how can I trust myself when this is active within me and when this is a tendency which keeps coming up or something. So yes, in that case, faith in the self, that has to be a faith in my possibility, not faith in my actuality. It's not that I have faith in myself that I am a great soul and everything I do is good and everything I do is right, but I have faith in my potential if I can develop it. So I sometimes give the example of wet clay that you use for molding pots and making images or pots or whatever. So if you want to be a potter and you order some clay so you can make pots, but you don't know anything about making pots yet, you just want to play around and get some experience. And UPS man delivers a box full of wet clay, and you look, what am I going to do with this wet, sticky stuff? I wanted to make beautiful pots, but this is just gray and messy and wet and sticky. That's not what I want. Well, no, a potter knows that this is what you make pots out of. And so with myself, this is the wet, sticky, messy clay that I have, but it has the capacity to make a beautiful pot. So let me do that. So I have faith in my potential. I see within myself faults. I see within myself shortcomings. I see that I don't always do the right thing. I see that I have some habits that are harmful to me, ways of thinking that are harmful to me. All of that's okay, but that's part of the wet clay. It's that out of which I can make a beautiful pot worthy of offering to God. So Swami Vivekananda told his disciples once in Belur Mutt, he said, let none be discouraged because they have anger. If you have anger, that means that you have power that can be redirected towards God. The person who has no capacity to get angry is either a realized soul or it's a good-for-nothing person that has not even enough energy to get up anger. And And so don't be upset if you have anger or other passions or things. That means that you have some substance. You have something that can be transformed and redirected towards God. So that way. Okay. Ajay.
I've got several questions, but this is the one.
Okay, just one for now because we're already over time.
You talked about faith.
Yeah.
This is chapter 18, verse number 65. Fix your heart to me, give your love to me, worship me, bow down before me, so shall you come to me. This is my pledge to you, for you are dear to me. Question is this, from this, starting with the faith and the call of the Lord to get that extent. So you get rid of illusions. Please elaborate a little bit more on that.
Okay.
The path.
Okay, so Sri Krishna says in the 65th verse of chapter 18, he says, bow down to me, love me. This is my pledge, this is my promise that I will, well, how does it end? I forget the end of the verse. This is my pledge, 60.
Yeah. Bow down before me, so you shall come to me.
Oh, so you should come to this. Yes. So you should come to me. This is my pledge to you. So yes, that's the essence of the path of faith. That if we direct our mind towards God, gradually we find that faith grows. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that the more you handle flowers, the more the perfume of the flowers sticks to your hands. And so the more, he meant that as an illustration of faith, that the more you think about God, the more you deal with God, the more the presence of God begins to color your thinking and your character. And so by bowing down to God, loving God, directing our thought towards God, that is the way that we build faith. Faith is that which begins to animate us, which again directs the compass of the mind towards God, and directs us on the path until we get to God. And so faith is that which directs us, animates us, and brings us along the path. Without faith, we can't go far on the path. After a while, we give up. And let me just tell and I'll just conclude with this because we're long over time. There's a story told by the Desert Fathers of Christianity. They were people in the early centuries after Jesus who lived out in the desert, in the Sinai Desert and in Egypt, in caves, and practiced prayer and meditation. And so their sayings were collected in those ancient times, 2,000 years ago. And so the sayings are collected as the sayings of the Desert Fathers. So one of them told the story of the hounds, the dogs, the hunting dogs, that were on a chase after they had seen a deer. And so they were chasing after the deer through the forest. And some other dogs, some other hounds, saw these hounds running. And so they joined in the chase. But after some time, the dogs that had just seen the other dogs running and wanted to join in, they got tired and they left the chase. But the dogs who had seen the deer, they wouldn't give up the chase because they knew what they were chasing. And so faith is that which gives us that eventually it gives us certainty that yes, there is something at the end of this chase, and I'm not going to give it up because I want to get there. And so Sri Krishna and Jesus and other great teachers and Ramakrishna have given the pledge that if we follow that, we will come to the divine. And so we have to pursue until the conclusion. So let me give a closing chant. Om Dio Shantihi Antariksham Shantihi Prithvi Shantihi Apas Shantihi Oshadhaya Shantihi Vanaspataya Shantihi Vishwe Deva Shantihi Brahma Shantihi Sarvam Shantihi Shantireva Shantihi Sama Shantiredhi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace is in the heavens, Peace is in the sky. Peace is on earth. Peace is in the waters. Peace in the plants and the trees. The gods are peace. Peace is the nature of truth. All is peace. Peace alone, peace. May that peace, real peace, be with us all. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all the beings of the universe.